Hello and welcome. It's Morgana here today with another semi-abstract watercolour demonstration. Today I'm going to show you how to create this beautiful misty pond scene using only 3 colours. I'm beginning today with a piece of Milford cold pressed watercolour paper, 100% cotton. I've got it taped to my board and my board is lying flat, surrounded by plenty of newspaper. And I'm just beginning by popping some clean fresh water onto my paper. I'm not going to cover the surface of the paper entirely. I'm leaving some gaps where I don't want my paint to run. Of course, where you put the water, your paint will start to move around, so I'm just mapping out my basic shape this way. The paints that I'm using today are on screen. Actually using my own handmade tube watercolour paints, so I'm so excited to try these out and to show you what they can do. I'll pop a link below if anybody's interested in having a look, checking them out, and maybe even purchasing 1 or 2 for yourself. So I'm starting today with our Kingfisher Blue. I'm just going to squeeze a little bit from the tube straight onto the underside and edge of my palette knife. And these are really strong colours, so don't actually need too much. The next is ultramarine pink, which I haven't tried yet, can you tell? The paint is still sealed, so what I'm going to do is just going to pop the seal very quickly and easily there using the point on the lid on the cap, and then just squeeze a little bit out next to the blue there. And lastly, I'm using a really interesting colour. This is our opaque zinc white paint, which I had to open off camera there as well. This is an opaque watercolour, so it works in a way that you wouldn't usually expect from a watercolour paint, but I think it just gives a lovely misty effect here for this painting. You can see I'm just doing a big old swipe with my palette knife, just going horizontally in like a soft diagonal across the paper. So I'm trying to keep these gentle sort of sloping diagonal lines. I don't want too many sort of firm horizontals in this one. I know my paint's going to move around quite a bit though, so I'm trying not to include too many different sort of lines or blocks of paint. I think when you first apply paint in this palette knife fashion to then spray and to get a sort of an abstract landscape, I think less is certainly more to begin with. So you can see I'm just using my mister and I'm spraying across the lines of paint that I've put down, and with a little judicious encouragement our paint is going to start to move around of its own accord. You can see the blue and the pink are blending together to give us a variety of beautiful pastel sort of violet pink hues, with the white as well, which is sort of moving around and integrating into the blue and the pink as well, giving us that lovely sort of misty creamy effect. I must admit I've never done this technique with an opaque white watercolour before, so this was as much as an experiment for me as I'm sure it may be for you guys watching, but I think I'll probably be doing it again because I really like how this one turned out. And don't forget to just wipe down your board edges just as and when they get a little bit too messy. Always have a bit of tissue or kitchen towel on hand, and of course a bit of newspaper to protect your surfaces. See, I'm just using a big flat brush here to just encourage the paint and move the water around I'm trying not to use the brush on the actual painted area. As you see, I'm just using it at the bottom here to encourage the water down. You get these lovely big sweeping lines, these lovely big upward sweeping lines from having the board upside down like that, which gave me the idea of popping some trees in along that top line. So you can see here, just adding in a bit more paint to really emphasize these shapes. And just sort of really marking out that curve that we got there, that's going to be the shape of a beautiful pond. Just really emphasizing that a little bit with the palette knife, adding some extra blue and some extra pink. And then just sweeping across to create a few more interesting lines and a bit of texture in the foreground. Now just clean off my palette knife, very easily done, just a little bit of tissue before now applying a touch more white. And the reason I wiped off my palette knife very quickly there, as I'm sure you can guess, is obviously the white picks up all the colours that are already there. So if I apply it on top of the paint that was already on the palette knife, then I would simply just be applying more blue and more purple rather than the sort of quite thick white that I'm after. If you don't have an opaque white paint, you can always use a white gouache for this. This will give you a similar effect, but that is even more of an opaque paint, so it will probably give you a stronger misty effect, a more bold white. And I just decided to get rid of that little purple mark there on the left that's sort of come up in the middle of the lake. And one of the wonderful things about the paper I'm using, this is Milford 100% cotton paper, is that it lifts really easily. That paint there hadn't quite fully dried, so I just sprayed it with a bit of clean water and I was able to dab out the mark with a bit of tissue, and as you can see, it's almost entirely vanished, which is a relief. So it's a good trick to know for people like me who tend to sort of make little messes and get things going a little bit wild and a little bit wayward. It's always nice to know that you can pull some marks out as and when you need to. I just want to get a little bit of movement in that top line there, so I'm doing a couple of extra sprays and then just moving the board. I'm sorry you can't quite see all of it. My filming's not that good yet. At some point I'll get a better setup, hopefully with another camera, so you can see a little bit more easily what I'm doing. But I am trying to show you the important parts, which is the paint moving and running. You can see there we've got this lovely shape starting to form, these twin curves, one on the left and one along the bottom, which is going to be our pond for this scene. And now I remember being happy with the rough shape of it, but wanting to emphasize those sort of sweeps of color in the top part a little bit more. So I decided to dry my painting upside down so that the water would run. This is a quick photograph I took of it drying. So I've got it upside down, the water is moving, you can see I'm getting these massive blooms of colour coming down towards the bottom of the painting. This is what it looks like when it's dry. You can see the directionality with which that paint has dried. It's moved of its own accord. I'm really happy with how this looks, and you can see that the colours as well in this paint are so bold and so vibrant They really have, despite all the water that I put on there, and you know, I mean, you saw I did put quite a lot of water. They've still given me some really bright, bold and beautiful colours. It's one of the things I love about paint making, is that I can make my own colours. I can make whatever I like, and I really like these ones. I think they work beautifully together, and deliberately make them really highly pigmented as well, so that they do precisely this. So now, just following those lovely tall blooms we got across that top line, I'm adding in a few wispy trees using my liner brush. This is a sword liner brush, synthetic one, a size small, but you of course can use whichever brush you see fit. The only thing that matters really is that it's got a nice fine point for doing these little detailed wispy branches. And I'm sticking with the same colours, so this is a 3-colour painting, and all I'm doing is I've just mixed up the blue and the pink on my palette. Funnily enough, the pink really does tend to darken the blue down into almost a violet hue, and you get this lovely sort of soft deep colour to start putting in some trees. I know it's not terribly realistic having blue and pink trees, but sometimes realism can be terribly boring. And I think in a landscape such as this, I think the colour harmony just worked somehow. So I'm just going to vary the colours, sort of vary the blue and the pink tones, and just get a little interest in these tree shapes. Not going to do them all exactly the same tone. And I'm just going to build the tree line along to the, working along from left to right here. So now I'm just beginning to introduce a little bit of the opaque zinc white into the trees, just to get a little bit of interest, some depth, some, well, it's not quite shadow, is it, because it's white, but I think it gives a really lovely tonal touch to these dark trees. And then draw in some lovely trees behind these deeper ones, using the opaque white, using it quite thickly. You do have to use it quite thickly to get it to really stand out, but to just give that hint of a beautiful sort of ghostly, elegant tree peeping through behind these deeper ones. A beautiful silver birch, perhaps, something tall and elegant and slender. Just really love how these colours all sort of harmonise together. So all I'm going to do now is just keep going along this top line, adding in trees and just varying the colours between these lovely darker trees that I'm painting the blue, and with the ultramarine pink, turning it into a lovely dusty violet colour, and just popping in the white trees peeping through as well. And I'm just going to follow these shapes that have been created in the initial abstract wash by turning the board upside down. I'm just going to try and use my trees to echo the shapes that have already been created, and hopefully get a lovely harmony along that tree line. So I've jumped forward a little bit. These are my trees. I think perhaps I went a bit tree happy, but they're actually so much fun to paint. You can of course add as many trees as you like, or as few trees as you like. If you think that looks like too much of a dense forest for you, then you can of course make them a little more sparse, but I think I just got a bit carried away, but I regret nothing. So now all I'm doing is using the same liner brush, lovely thin lines, just going along around the edge of this semicircular lake we've got on the left, and adding in some reeds. And you'll notice that as soon as I begin to add this sort of reed texture, it's as if the lake magically seems to appear before our eyes. So human sort of eyes need that extra little bit of detail in an abstract or semi-abstract landscape to make you sort of recognise a thing for what it is. As soon as I start putting the reed beds in, that to me that becomes apparent as a lake, and those marks along the sort of upper edge of the pale semicircle immediately become the reflections of the trees and the foliage that's around there, and of course the white becomes that lovely bright glowing water reflecting the cool sky above. So I've just gone ahead and jumped ahead a wee bitty bit, just so that you didn't have to watch another 20 minutes of me painting in reeds. But of course, same technique, just vary your colours a little bit, move between the blue and the pink and the white, or whatever your chosen trio of colours might be, and just use as fine a brush as you can find, just pop them in with nice sort of long, elegant, wispy strokes. And now for the final detail for me on this is, of course, our handsome blue heron. And all I did was sketch out a really basic shape with my pencil before I began painting, literally just a sort of an oblong mixed with an oval, like a diagonal oval for the body, and then you want a little S shape for the neck, an oval for the head, and then the long narrow beak. And then I'm just using a really fine brush to begin filling in details. Again, just using the same three colours that I have done all along, just varying the tone a little bit and just give this chap a little bit of personality. And you can see that all I'm doing here is just switching between the colours and just trying to get a little bit of variation in tone in the heron, using the white brush for the beak, and of course for the sort of paler detail on the neck and the wing. I'm using the darker blue, so the blue mixed with a little of the pink, to just fill in the dark lines that are his legs. So a quick tip as well If you're not very confident with your details, you can use a waterproof fine liner pen to add in some last few details if you're not super confident at doing, a very fine line to just shadow the beak, or a little sort of dot here and there for the eye. Or if you don't have a dark enough paint on your palette, you can quickly whip out fine liner and add the details in that way. Of course, do wait until your paint has dried before doing this, otherwise you are in danger of gumming up the nib and ruining your pen. So all I'm doing is just using the fine liner to just add a little bit of black detail. And now I'm using the white equivalent, so this is a white Jelly Roll gel pen, which comes up opaque, so it will go over darker colours, not completely, but it is very good. And I'm just going to use that just to show you how you can also add in little paler details, little highlights here and there, using the white gel pen. If you don't have a steady hand or as fine a brush as you'd like, to just add in a few highlights and a few shadows. This is just sort of a shortcut in a way. So I'm just going to keep adding in details until I'm happy with him. I decided to lighten my heron up a wee bit along the wing, but now that I've done that, I'm really happy with him. So I've got the pale colour along the wing and a little bit along the beak, and so that is the final touch. So thank you everybody very much for watching. If you're interested in learning more about our handmade paints, please follow the link in the video description below to our Etsy store, where I make all of these paints by hand in collaboration with Lois Davidson, who is an incredible watercolour artist. And also, why not pop over to her channel to check out her demonstration using our handmade tinted graphite watercolour set, the Deep Forest collection, which is a really beautiful demonstration. I highly recommend. So thank you again everybody for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the demo. I'd love to hear what you think of these colours in the comments below. If you've got any thoughts, ideas, questions, lay them on me. But other than that, I hope you're all having a wonderful day wherever you are, whatever you're up to, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon in the next video.